Welcome back to the program. Thank you very much for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Let's talk about a recent development that has taken center stage in the national polity as the Tinubu administration tries to carry out reforms in the agricultural sector. Now, the livestock industry has become the backbone of Nigeria's agriculture sector, supporting livelihoods of millions of farmers, herders, processors, and distributors across various parts of the country. However, the sector continues to face numerous challenges, including low productivity, limited market access, as well as inadequate infrastructure, which continues to hinder the potential drive of the economic advantage in that particular area. For the recent inauguration of the Committee on Livestock Reforms by the President under the co-chairmanship of Professor Jega, who is the past chairman of INEC, new dawn is emerging with regards to the possibility as well as the potentiality of reforms in that era. So what would it look like, especially considering the fact that many administrations in time past have tried to revitalize this particular sector for more productivity as well as growth and development? And what are some of the expectations going into this one? What are the chances that this time around, with the renewed hope, reform into the livestock industry, things might perhaps change for the better? Well, let's speak to someone who is a part of that committee, a member of the Presidential Committee on the Implementation of Livestock Reform. Aminu Nyako is joining us on the program. He's a dairy farmer, an agripreneur, and public policy subject expert. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Right.
We hear of entrepreneurs. Sometimes you're looking at people above 60.
Right.
And when they show up, they just don't match what you have up there. It's good to see that trend is changing.
Thank you for the compliment.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start this way. What, in your view, is the best way to look at this challenge that we're faced with right now? I mean, obviously, the agriculture sector itself needs revamping. But in talking about livestock, for instance, which is a part of us culturally and traditionally, how do we need to dimension the challenge that lies before us?
Well, thank you again for having me here. I think it's important to know that the way Nigerians have viewed agriculture agriculture as a sector has always taken maybe the limelight role, but a limited role in terms of the scope of what agriculture can be. In recent times, we all know that the country has to actually diversify fully into agriculture because our oil incomes, oil revenues have kind of started to wane. And we know oil demand in the next 10 years may drop even further. So it's important for Nigerians to realize that we now need to start to prioritize our limited resources into the agricultural space. Now, having put that context in mind, it's now important to know that agriculture mainly is seen as a crop production side of agriculture and a livestock side of agriculture. And over the last 30 years, we've only focused on the crop side because Nigeria has really been focused on feeding itself. And when you talk about feeding yourself, you're thinking about cultivation of rice, maize, staple foods like granules. It's things that human beings eat, and you just think livestock as a sector will just develop itself. But now that the President Asiwaju's administration is taking a focus in agriculture in a very keen way, it's now important to realize that livestock itself has a completely different dimension for you to be able to unlock its possibilities outside of cropping. And it's with that impetus that I think the former governor of Kano State, as long as His Excellency Ganduje, as well as the Minister of Agriculture, put this committee together and had us really brainstorm ways of unlocking the value within the livestock sector. Nigeria, if most people don't know, Nigeria has had a lot of interest from the Gulf countries, from the South African countries, South American countries to come into Nigeria and offtake livestock. We know we're blessed with abundance. Most people don't realize we're a country of 220 million people, but the estimated livestock in the country is about 160 million. So it's more than half of our population actually. But nobody really has a keen way of understanding what the sector is. How do we leverage the sector fully? I know we have, and livestock is really both the ruminant animals and non-ruminant. So people think it's cows. The sector is much more than cows. It is cattle, goats, ram, small ruminants, rabbits, camel, poultry. All this is in there, and we've left that sector, apart from poultry that has kind of organized itself a little bit. They are not at anywhere near full potential. However, all the other parts are just left to its own devices. And I think it's rather important that we know that within the implementation plan is how do we unlock livestock as a full sector that can provide its own measure of quota to GDP the way it should be.
You know, during the Obasanjo administration, we took some liking to the whole conversation around livestock, but likely it was around poultry, and that accounts for some of the results that we've seen today, whether big and small level. There was some encouragement for that sector, and people saw that they could make money from it and went into it in different forms. But what is the perception around when it comes to cattle and even goats and all of that? Is it because it appears in our psyche that it's something that is largely controlled by people from a section of the country, and it appears like you can't just visualize the opportunity around going into it, or where to start, or what to do with it exactly?
So that's a very important point about what Obasanjo did for poultry. You see, me as a young Nigerian, I think we always tend to lose the why. Why do you want to invest in a sector? When you have your why and you understand the why, it's a bit easier for you to kind of project what you need to do. You see, a country of 220 million people, with over 100 million people below the age of 18, for you to, as a young person or a young child, to hit full productivity, you need protein. And most protein are animal proteins. And the cheapest proteins you see are milk, eggs, and the most expensive is meat. So if you're not investing, these are all things that livestock give you.
That's right.
Every other thing in cropping side is more rice is carbohydrate, maize is carbohydrate. So most of our meals will tell you that they will cut meat and they'll give you 2 pieces. Because they are managing the livestock side, but the protein is the most important part of the meal for brain development, osteoporosis, calcium. It's a lot of things. So me as a young person, I'm extremely pleased that Asuaji is putting his focus on this, and President Asuaji is putting his focus on this, because if we're projecting that in 2050 we're going to be 400 million, if you do not start looking at livestock as a keen contributor, so milk, importantly, which is what my company does in its vein, eggs, which former President Olusegun Obasanjo put focus on, but nobody has put focus on meat, and we know we have the abundance. People don't realize that Nigeria, right before the World War II, was exporting its dairy products and its meat products. We contributed heavily after World War II to England, sending cheese, sending milk out. But you see, right after World War II, most dairy development plans, Europeans took livestock as a keen driver of their own economic development. They protected the industry, which is still protected till today. And then we got cut off from export. And Nigeria's mentality now moved into, let us feed ourselves. And all of a sudden, you saw that agro exports has dwindled to a level that it doesn't even contribute what it was contributing before. It's important to note here that unlocking this livestock industry is not only going to enable Nigerians reach their full potential in terms of their dairy requirements, feed requirements, protein requirements, but if done properly, it gives us access to our exports. Right now, they will tell you our hides and skin is for big fashion companies are gotten from Kano. Do people realize it is individual aggregation? It's not being driven or supported by government, really. It's individuals that know these potentials that are doing some of these things. Before we knew what our hides and skins were doing, our meat right now, we know what it's doing. We know what our milk is doing within the country. We know that we get heavy orders from the Gulf countries for our goats, carcass. Nobody is really organizing this industry to say, listen, this is the potential of livestock, and this is what it can give both Nigerians within and international companies without. And for me, it's, look, we know that if Nigeria is keen on developing into an industrialized nation, the center point of development must be agriculture, and it must be crop and livestock.
Well, what would you tell people who say that, listen, for the better part of the last 50 years or so, we've seen the private sector run the growth and development of the agriculture sector rather successfully because they stand to gain a lot of money from it. But here in Nigeria, we always see the government in the driving seat of all of the reforms, all of the stimulus that the industry needs, and that itself is not sustainable because the government cannot fund agriculture all alone. But you're talking about organization here. So what is this initiative trying to achieve by organizing the industry so that private equity can come in, and then we're talking about jobs, we're talking about economic growth and a better outlook for this country?
You see, the policy drive of the implementing committee is to create the enabling environment for private sector to come in. The honest truth, we know, and most people realize that I'm in the dairy sector, but I'm completely private. There's no government infrastructure around me. And I think it was within that wisdom they made me the subcommittee chairman on the business model for the implementation committee to work. So I'm in charge of the ranching models, the dairy models, the beef model, the feedlot models. And we have it as a mantra within the implementation committee to ensure that whatever apparatus of government that has been decided, be it an agency, ministry, committee, unit, whatever, department, program, we must center our focus on only creating the enabling environment for private sector to enter. We know that Nigeria doesn't have excess liquidity to just pump money into a sector. And we know that even if they do so, they crowd out private investment.
That's right.
So what we are doing is, my program in Adamawa State, which currently has about 18,000 pastoral farmers giving me milk every morning, it's a private-driven enterprise. We do not own their cows, they own their cows. We only created the infrastructure, milk collection centers, cooling centers, cold logistics, to pick this milk from them and pay them every week. And we've created great prosperity in Adamawa, Taraba, and southern parts of Borno over the last 3 years. It's within this mindset that we said, okay, if we're going to try and hit scale with what we've seen as a proven concept within the Sebori International Farms model, what then does scale look like across all these value chains? I tell people, I went to Lebanon in 2021 in January, and I went there on poultry. And the Lebanese model in Beirut is they have one centralized feed mill, they have one centralized incubation for day-old chicks, and they have one centralized veterinary service. And every individual within local farms, they give you your capacity. So if they tell you, okay, you're in the poultry industry, we're going to collect eggs from you. They tell you, go and buy your day-old chicks from this place. This is where you collect the feed that has been perfectly formulated to get that poultry at maximum scale. Your medicine, you get it here. And then once you're done over the 6 weeks and you lay eggs, just take your eggs to this place and you'll be paid. They have unburdened the individual farmer in other countries. In Nigeria, we've left it to the devices of individuals, which makes it very difficult and very hard to make profitable.
Looking into you alone, I have goosebumps with some of the things I saw in Holland, and my head almost went bonkers. But at the heart of whatever success this committee would achieve is the subnationals, government at the subnational level taking interest, because the enabling, especially when it comes to land and all of that, must happen from them. It doesn't appear in the last 20, 30 years that they even understand how much potential that they are sitting on. Somebody is doing something within your space that you can scale with some level of support, and you just don't care. It doesn't add up to you. How much of, what strategies are there, to really get their buy-in? Because we may not have the government pump the kind of money we have, but there are loads of latent capital in this country. The Minister of Finance, for instance, revealed how dollar balances in Nigerian bank accounts, Nigeria average over 30 billion, not deployed. They are sort of, people are just preserving their wealth from depreciation and inflation. But if they find business models that are very useful, that promises important return on investment, I'm sure they are willing to go in there. But they are also looking at environmental factors, they are looking at governance, which has been an issue. And then we have the age-long cultural issue of the farmer-herder clash because of the way we had always done things culturally. Is this committee, is it part of this committee mandate to address all of this?
Yes, as part of the committee, we looked at all stakeholder groups on a vertical scale, horizontal scale, and a lateral scale. And what I mean by that is, look, right now, most of Nigeria's agro assets are actually owned by individuals and in a diverse way. We are not saying that government is going to come and own capital. What we're saying is that the Livestock Committee is meant to create the enabling environment for interaction across all stakeholder groups to unlock the value within the sector. So take, for example, if you need a small rural road to unlock a community that's giving me milk, instead of you going to go and buy the cows, the community already has the cows. Right now, you cannot, most people don't know the individual farmers producing maize, but you know you can aggregate maize.
That's right.
This is the kind of mindset we want to do, create the enabling environment for livestock to thrive. And what you said during the inauguration of the committee, we had the governor of, the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum in there, and I think the chairman of the Governor Abdullahi, he was present, and the chairman of the All Progressive Governor, I think is Governor of Imo, His Excellency Hope Uzodinma. They are also very keen. And we are collaborating with the Nigeria's Governors Forum to kind of let them know that there are areas of specialization. You need to understand that every sector of every geopolitical zone has a comparative advantage.
That's right.
It's difficult for you to take goat now to Borno. We're not goat. Borno Northeast don't really do goat that way. But the Southeast and South do goat. And it's a livestock that can unlock tremendous value. So instead of forcing things on people, we're not saying that the entire Nigeria needs to do cattle, which is kind of the mindset that you're hearing the discourse move on, that is cattle. It's not just cattle. If we're going to say the Southeast, South should focus on goat, the Northeast should focus on cows, the Northwest should focus on rams and goats, the Southwest should focus on poultry. If that is decided at the Nigerian Governors Forum level and other stakeholders agree this is what to focus on, then you literally focus your education, your training, your infrastructure, your offtake on that value chain, because that's how you get an aggregation. You don't want to be teaching new things to our people. Nigeria doesn't have that time to be able to get to food security by forcing upon people. It's like saying you want an Adama man to grow cassava for you. He doesn't know cassava. You can go to Oyo, Ogun, Oshun, they know cassava. So for you to upscale their skill set to get maximum productivity, in Nigeria, our bane is productivity. The farmers that have been cultivating land have been cultivating land for the last 50 years. That's why you were surprised I'm a young farmer.
That's right.
Here. Those people have old skills that have not been able to keep up with technology, has not been able to keep up with the productivity that other parts of the climate are doing. What we are hoping this committee does is that we're going to specialize across Nigeria. That's the first thing. We're going to create the enabling environment and infrastructure to be able to unlock the value within those sectors that have been created. Just to give you a caveat, most people don't realize that the shed for a cow is different from a shed from a goat. The goat one must be elevated 1 meter. If you put a goat shed on the ground, it will never hit your productivity. For poultry, it must be a completely enclosed space because of the vaccine, their sensitivity to disease. If you do poultry and you leave it out, you are leaving your poultry for devices. So it's this kind of little things that have evolved over time that our elderly farmers have not been able to embrace it because they are used to what they are used to. Our focus within the committee is to provide 5 things, or enabling an environment for 5 things, which is organized offtake, energy, training, access to good information, and then the last one is vet care for all of it. But the important thing is that we want to de-risk existing farmers so that they can produce more without fear of losses and get new farmers interested and let them know that this is going to become a profitable venture for you and is going to be a driver of growth for Nigeria to come.
And in talking about this, the skeptics would say, going back the past 24 years, right? You could talk about the National Livestock Development Program initiated by Obasanjo in 1999, for instance. You can go down memory lane and also talk about the presidential initiative on livestock, also by the Obasanjo administration in 2005. You can talk about the 2014 Livestock Productivity and Resilience Support Project by the Goodluck administration. You can also talk about the Agricultural Transformation Agenda in 2011, and the recent one before the committee was inaugurated by the Tinubu administration was in 2019, when the Buhari administration launched the National Livestock Transformation Plan. And most Nigerians will say, what do we have to show for all of these initiatives that all targeted the livestock industry? How much of some of those ideas are you incorporating into what you're doing right now? And what are the chances that this will not be another failed experiment going forward?
Well, that's a loaded question. And to be honest with you, the only thing I will tell you is this. The fundamental dynamics of Nigeria has changed. During those parts of the implementation, you need to understand that the macro setting for Nigeria was different. Firstly, Nigeria was oil-rich and we had revenue. Secondly, the exchange rate was good. Thirdly, we didn't have the population we had. Right now, the reason I'm optimistic about this is one thing. We must do it. There is no cutting corners in terms of unlocking the livestock value chain, because Nigeria doesn't have those things. We have more mouths to feed. Our currency has been devalued, so imports are more expensive. Before, when you said this is the hard work you need to do, but dollar was strong, naira was strong, sorry. So you could just import and get your protein requirement. Right now, people know how difficult. I think a piece of egg now is 300 naira, right? From
30 naira.
From 30 naira. That is massive inflation and devaluation. It's signaling that if we do not make these investments today, we may not be able to afford solutions tomorrow. And then lastly, like I'll tell you, is something that is indicative of what I have been able to go through. In 2005, President Obasanjo was able to rejig poultry in large part. But you need to understand that I'm in the Northeast. And for you to unlock livestock, you need energy. And this energy as a critical factor is because you can buy maize and keep it in a dry warehouse. Nothing happens. You can buy rice paddy and keep it in, but you can't buy meat and leave it on the table. You can't buy milk and leave it on the table. You need energy to be able to get it cooled. Cold logistics is required. In my program in Adamawa State, what we did is that we invested in renewable energy, off-grid solutions, which are solar and batteries. My farm currently produces 5 megawatts of solar with 5 megawatts of battery storage, which has given us an energy stability and soothing. All my 78 collection centers across Borno, Adamawa, and Taraba are all on renewable energy, solar, and batteries. That has given me cooling at last mile. This is technology that was not available 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There are no banks, like banking infrastructure in Adamawa. You're from Adamawa, like 21 local governments, only 4 local governments have bank. Jimeta, Yola, Mubi, and Grori. All the other ones don't have banking infrastructure. But what we did is that we leveraged the SANEF agency banking of the central bank, again, which was not available 5 years ago, to create mobile wallets across 18,000 people that we can pay them every Friday. We paid, even federal government IPSIS pays every month. This mobile infrastructure pays every Friday. So it gives all the farmers confidence that, look, I only need to work and be diligent for 7 days. I'll get paid. And our lowest earning farmer in our daily program right now earns 180,000 naira a month, which is roughly about 45,000 naira a week. The highest earning one, I will not snitch on them, but we have people earning 1.3 million in the month on just milk, because we were able to invest in the infrastructure. We provided organized offtake in Sebore, that whatever milk you produce, we will buy. We've provided them energy, which is solar and renewable across, so we're able to preserve the quality of the product. We've provided them infrastructure by creating mobile infrastructure milk collection centers. We provided logistics. We own our cold vans that go around and pick milk and bring it in for onward processing. And we provide them training. So when we start, we tell them, this is exactly what you need to do to get the milk collected at hygienic level for us. If you meet the standard, we buy. If you do not meet the standard, we don't buy. And just by putting these 5 things in place, we have unlocked the value of milk, which is the most perishable product in Nigeria today. And if you're able to unlock that, then what else other sectors that don't require that much heavy lifting?
All right. We have given you a TEDx opportunity. I'm talking about our viewers at home, free of charge, and that's the kind of quality you get from this thing. And I'm just thinking, at the back of my head, that my next leave, I would call him and tell him I'm spending my 25 days in your farm.
You need to move to Adama. That's the beauty of that program.
When I begin with the car, I mean, in 2 days I should be in Adama if I'm driving.
Exactly.
And just immerse myself in all of these projects. Not because I have the millions he has to invest in all of those power projects, but maybe that will stimulate other ideas that you can
those are some of the ideas that the government needs to borrow to scale.
That's what we're trying to put. This type of expertise is what we're trying to put in the implementation.
We're going to have to leave the conversation here for now and keep tabs on some of the developments with regards to this Renewed Hope initiative. Hopefully, it will renew the hope of the investors to see need to do business here in Nigeria and perhaps to help us address this food insecurity that we continue to deal with, especially when it comes to the livestock and, of course, the prospect for the future. I mean, as always, thank you so much for joining the conversation and wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you so much.
Hope to circle back in due time to talk about some success stories with regards to some of the committee's work and what we've been able to achieve going forward. Inshallah. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
We're going to take a quick break. Mr. Bensham will join us shortly for a quick look at the front pages of some select national dailies. Newspaper review is coming up next.